see you.
This is great.
This is the Warriors Summit, flanked by the Morning Rose, Bonte and Joe.
Yeah, baby. I wonder who I'm pissed off in here. Somebody said they're mad at me.
Flanked by Midday Steiny and Goo. They're not saying boo, they're saying goo.
Oh, wow. Might be saying boo.
They might be saying boo.
I'll determine.
Flanked by my partner, Dan Dibley. Yeah. And Warriors pre and post, John.
The one and only.
Yeah, baby.
All right. Listen, I threw it out there for discussion purposes before we get to Bob Myers. JD, I wanted to finish that conversation with you. And the thought process is this, again, for discussion purposes about what the Warriors might be thinking, because the Warriors in any trade are not solely going to be thinking about what they can get back. They're also going to be thinking about the finances of a move. We know that Joe Lacob has said publicly that $400 million is not going to happen. Maybe he changes his mind. We shall see. But he has said that publicly in the past. You look at what the Celtics might be thinking. We can't do 5 years of two players that equal $100 million. So for the Celtics, cutting that up into players who make less that are already signed for 4 more years might make sense if you turn a Jaylen Brown into Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins. And for the Warriors, could it make sense to bring in a player that is available, ready for a supermax in Jaylen Brown, who could be your future one? Now, it may mean that Klay Thompson's days are numbered after 1 more year, or would need to take money at a severely reduced rate. But if we're going to talk about younger, more athletic, more dynamic, and less cost, I think it's worth a phone call. That's all I'm saying.
From a basketball standpoint, if I'm the Warriors, I would absolutely do that.
And the Celtics may hang up. I get that.
And the Celtics may hang up. And look, if I'm the Celtics, not to get lost in the weeds on them, but the only way I'm trading Jaylen Brown at this point is if Jaylen Brown walks in and says, I'm out.
Exactly.
Like that. Because if I'm the Celtics, I'm thinking, hey, we're still closer than you guys are to winning it, even though they're going to go out and they're going to
be frustrated in Boston. They're going to be frustrated for sure.
But I don't think that that's a deal that Boston would really want to do. Bonte, what did you think of that? I know you kind of threw it out, and I was just curious which side.
So I look at it like this: Andrew Wiggins, is he comparable to Jaylen Brown? Yeah. We look at the finals last year.
He's comparable, but Jaylen Brown's
really good.
Player.
But who performed better on the biggest stage last year in the playoffs?
Wiggins did.
Yeah, Wiggins did, right?
Wiggins did in that year.
That's 2 weeks of his life on the basketball court.
He had a great postseason.
He was good for 2 months. Are we trusting Wiggins is going to be better than Jaylen Brown?
That's a great question.
I'm not. I wouldn't do that.
I don't think the drop-off is that severe, though, from Jaylen Brown and Andrew Wiggins. This is my opinion.
Because Jordan Tatum was their problem in that series more than Brown was.
Dribbling was
a problem. Jaylen Brown can't dribble. Jaylen Brown's a great player. I'd love to bring him back to the Bay Area. But now I'm looking at Boston. I think they would do that deal. You get a wild card to Jonathan Kuminga, who could still be a two-way player, and they have room. Then they clear up the number one angle, because right now they're talking Boston, who's your number one, Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum? And you see them playing my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. There you trade Jaylen Brown, you're saying, Tatum, you're our guy. You're our guy. Everybody's playing off of you. We noticed that Andrew Wiggins loved being in the backup role, a 2-3 option. He loved it in Boston. He's close to Toronto, all that stuff. And then Jordan Poole, doesn't he need to change the scenery? Would Jordan Poole thrive with a change of scenery and a new setting and a guy who could get to the cup? This guy's a starter, averaging 24, 25 a game in the NBA. Chumps don't just average 24, 25 in a game as a starter in the NBA. So if I'm Boston, I'm doing that deal. And if I'm the Warriors, I'm saying, okay, if I get this up, how many picks am I getting back? It can't just be two players. So Malcolm Brogdon, we see him get cooked left and right, dude. You're not getting athletic. It's one player basically for 3, in my opinion. I wouldn't do the deal if I'm going to go to the
real quick. Jordan Poole's getting cooked as much as anybody on the defensive side. So let's keep that in mind as well. Shasky, would you look at everybody
when Bonte and I went back to Boston? I know JD can attest to this. I was blown away at the perception in Boston of Jaylen Brown. They were ready to move off of him last year in the summer, and I couldn't believe it because we were sitting there going, "Are you crazy?" Like he's one of the young guys that you are going to trade everything for if you're another team to try to to get him in town. He clearly is unhappy there. I just don't see why they would accept that deal, personally. I love it for the Warriors. I want him. What did I say to you this morning? I walked into the studio, I said, Boston's got to break that thing up, and I'm doing anything I can to get either Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Because either one of those guys with a Steph Curry, now you're cooking with grease.
Does that deal put you over the top?
I don't know.
Does it put you over the top against the Denver Nuggets?
I don't know.
You have a Joker problem.
I don't know.
You have a Joker problem.
Get bigger.
I agree it gets you closer. I'm with JD.
Yeah.
I'm with JD.
What do you think, Steiny?
I mean, I always look at it from the other side, and I have no interest. And I know he just signed a pretty good deal last year. I got no interest in Andrew Wiggins. None.
Really?
Zero.
He missed 45 games.
If you're Boston,
no.
I thought you were high on Wiggins.
Can you tell us why?
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can rely on him. He's had 1 year where he met expectations. He had 6 years in Minnesota where he didn't meet expectations. Then he had an unbelievable season where he was a championship cog. And you know what? And I know he's a nice guy, but then he got paid.
Do you think his absence?
Then he got paid, and he took half a year off.
Got paid less.
Yeah, he's picking.
But that was Steiny's. I'll ask you to. Yeah, I'll ask Steiny. Do you think he lost some people on the organization with his absence?
$100 million, and then something happened, and he said, I'm going to take half a year off.
But see, that's hard.
What do you done me? Yes, it is harsh.
Yeah.
It's harsh, but it's a fact.
No, I find it disingenuous.
Yeah.
What if he would have been on a contract?
He wasn't in Cabo, Steiny.
You'd already made
Do you know where he was?
No, I don't.
No, nobody does.
But his dad was sick.
He was good in the playing year, too.
I'm just saying. I don't want to. You know what? I'm sorry. I don't want to get bogged down
let's
into
not go there.
that scope.
What about
but
this?
no, Andrew Wiggins doesn't do anything for me if I'm on another team.
Wow. 7-5 in Game 5.
Dips.
I mean,
he was arguably your second best player.
Is Andrew Wiggins
he's playing with 3 Hall of Famers.
Steiny.
Who else has 3 Hall of Famers on their team?
Steiny! Shut it! Dips. What do you think? Is Andrew Wiggins trustable?
No, absolutely not. And we had a bit when we did middays for 51 weeks talking about K-Wig because every single night he was 6 of 14, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist. That's what he was until he wasn't for the course of, it was 2 weeks, was it 2 months, whatever it was. That one postseason, he was the player we all thought he should have been his whole career. I'm more on Steiny's boat in terms of trusting him. And if I'm Boston, there's no way I'm getting Andrew Wiggins back in a Brown deal because he's way better than Andrew Wiggins.
Can you trust Jaylen Brown?
Brogdon win a title in Milwaukee?
Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown was awesome
in Indiana
for the most part.
Jaylen Brown has had games. Jaylen Brown has had games where he's had 3 field goal attempts in the last 3 quarters.
Right.
Like, what's going on there? He just disappears.
And he didn't have an answer for it, but he wanted to throw his teammates under the bus.
And defensively, Jimmy Butler's having his way with anybody. But Andrew Wiggins, he was able to shut the faucet off of a lot of good guys last year in the playoffs.
If we're saying that Jordan Poole is the guy who needs a change of scenery, then why isn't Jaylen Brown the same guy who needs a change of scenery?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the drop-off between Wiggins and Jaylen Brown, I don't think it's that drastic. I think, Jaylen Brown's the better player, the bigger prospect.
Right.
Maybe has the better future. But Wiggins, as a 2 or 3, has played at the championship level. And I just think that's
whose
giving up a lot.
contract is favorable?
That's giving up a lot. Yeah,
whose
Wiggins
contract
has a
is favorable
deal.
right now?
You got to give Jaylen Brown a supermax at some point, right?
It's
a lot of money.
But
to me, both Celtics players in a way are very defined. And Jaylen Brown, you might think is overrated or underrated, but I almost feel like it's 3 unknowns for the Warriors at this point. Where Wiggins is at.
I mean, I feel like all 5 players in that deal, you could put the word unknown on them in one way, shape, or form. But
who's the most valuable guy in that deal?
To me,
Jaylen
Brown.
No doubt.
Jaylen Brown.
No doubt.
Warriors Summit, Juan Vino here in Walnut Creek. All right, let's get to Bob Myers. Steiny, why don't you lead us off on this? The situation that is surrounding it, and it's really 2 questions. Is he going to go? And if he does, what does that mean for the team?
Well, I think it just feels like a natural transition point for a guy like Bob Myers, right? He's got 3 daughters the youngest is 4. I think the oldest is 12. He told me that the other day, and I forgot because I don't listen very well. But he's got daughters that apparently need some attention.
The other day
from their father. No, but it just feels to me like he's at a point. He's been here 10, 12 years. What more can he do? It'd be a great time to reassess a career, late 40s. Like anybody here who's late 40s or older, boy, how nice would it be to reassess a career in your late 40s knowing you don't have to worry about money. You can spend that year with your family. I just think it makes perfect sense. It's the job from now to the future is indescribably harder than the job in the last 10 years.
Matt, I just want to let you know I'm in my late 40s. I'm not looking to reassess my career at all. Let's go to JD. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and I've said this, I mean, to me it feels like Bob wants to go, and he's trying to muster up, I don't know, the courage maybe, or to really go through with it or not at this point. And we'll see if Steph can maybe get a hold of him, or Draymond, or even Klay Thompson, and convince him maybe to run it back one more time, because I think everything does get more difficult for the Warriors if he isn't around, just based on the fact that he's so tied to Steve Kerr and Steph and Draymond and Klay. They all respect him, and they all agree that they're in this thing together. So taking that little piece away, I do think it upsets the fabric of the culture that they've been able to build. He's a big part of that.
Yeah.
Just as a human, he's a big part of that.
Well, let's bring in Guru, who texts with him every other day and sits in his seats whenever possible. No, but I mean, like, you guys have him on your show a lot throughout the year. Like, what are you thinking right now?
Every great mob movie, the top dons, they're made. And Bob Myers should be made. He should never, after what he's accomplished with the Golden State Warriors and put together, that Saturday against Boston on a pregame where Woj comes in, Greeny, I have information that Bob is working without a contract. So Steiny might be right. We're dads. It might be about his family and his daughters. But to me, I go to the TK podcast where Joe Lacob, the Don, the owner, was on there, and he talked about the depth in the department that, to me, was led by Bob Myers. And then here's my son, Joe Lacob. You got Dunleavy. To me, if I were Bob Myers, let go of my ego, that would rub me the wrong way. I should be a Christmas gift wrapped up under the tree with everything I've done. It shouldn't come down to the fourth quarter.
Can you take offense to that when you have been offered a contract that would make you the highest paid GM in the history?
I worked with somebody that broke that news.
Which contract?
What's that?
The first one he was offered?
Because we didn't know.
When was the first one?
Yeah, there were two of them.
I know, but when?
It's on the table right now.
I just know that Joe Lacob confirmed he offered him at least 2 contracts.
That we all missed.
So
that nobody heard anything about.
So the ball is in Bob's court. Bonte, Joe, what do you guys?
Joe, you go ahead.
Joe, what do you think?
You haven't talked in a while.
I just think the job is so hard. Like NFL GM, you can cut anyone you want. It's guaranteed money. It's super easy. Not easy. The roster flips over 40 to 60% every year. Baseball, if you have unlimited funds, Yankees could buy a left-handed pitcher and not pitcher them, and they could still be in the top 2 or 3 of the AL East. NBA, you sign one bad contract, Duncan Robinson, he's on the bench, you're in trouble. And then Duncan Robinson ends up playing.
Unless you're Miami, who can develop it.
Exactly. But they had Tyler Hero waiting in the wings, and they were playing him. Gabe Vincent gets an opportunity. I think NBA GM is the hardest because it's so penal once you get up there in salaries. They've made it so difficult to create moves. Right. It's so difficult to find a trade partner. I think the job is way harder than we're making it out to be.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1. San Francisco, always live on Twitch, YouTube, and the free Odyssey app. I think about it this way, and Bonte and Dibbs weigh in, but like when we talk about drafting, developing, Bob Myers is so much more than that. This is not just a GM. If we're going to say you're behind the big 3, then to me, Bob Myers' presence is an even bigger deal, because who are the big 3 without Bob Myers? What happens when Draymond goes sideways and Bob's not there to set him straight? I think that's a fair point. One thing that we haven't brought up yet, for those of you who are behind the idea of Draymond not being on the team next year, who is Draymond Green if Bob's not there? That you might get that version of Draymond Green. We've not seen it before, and that frightened me a little bit, to be honest with you.
Oh, we've heard about it, right? I mean, look, maybe Bob Myers doesn't want the blood on his hands. Maybe he knows this isn't a championship core. And maybe personally he's like, you know what? I just can't do it. I can't tell one of the core guys, bye-bye. I've won championships with them. I don't want to have that on my resume. Let me just take a year off. It's been a lot with this dynasty. The first run, the KD years, the play-in, you win 15 games, you come back, you win a championship. Maybe Bob just says, you know what? This is the perfect time to walk away and reset my mind and see what options I have moving forward. Because, I don't know, it's tough. You get a new GM in here, he's like, I'm not attached to Draymond Green or Klay, and I'm ready to make moves.
And Steiny made a good point, first time in months, but the idea that whoever takes the job is going to have to preside over the dismantling. Unless you're a guy who takes a 2-year deal, which never happens. If you're the new GM, you know your job is going to be saying goodbye to Draymond, Klay, and maybe even Steph at the end of it. And if you're Bob and you're not a guy who wants to be ego-wise, the highest paid guy, if you want to stick around just for the money, you look at what the job is going to entail going forward, and it's not a comfortable job for Bob.
How much control does Bob or the other GM, whoever it might be, how much do they really have in these decisions? Is Joe Lacob involved at all?
He told us Joe Lakers involved in every decision.
Is he involved?
He told us personally. He's like, I'm involved.
That's my point.
Well, think about it in terms of the draft picks, and that's what I'm looking back. It's like Wiseman, and to a lesser point, Kuminga. Were those Bob picks? Were they Lacob specials? Where did those? Well, picks
Anthony
come
Lamb
from?
Certainly was not Joe Lacob.
Right. Well, yeah, and nor was Ty Jerome, I'm sure. But
aside from that,
Go ahead, JD.
Steph, Klay, Draymond, and Kerr are telling you that Steph, Klay, Draymond, and Kerr are staying together.
Well, they all want extensions too.
So when you talk about power and who's got and
it's
Lacob,
a money play
you're
for
right
sure.
about Lacob.
Well, look back to
Lacob's
the
involved, but those three are telling everybody we're staying. So the GM isn't going to have power over those three.
No doubt.
So you're starting with that.
Well, the whole thing is always a collaboration. I think it's something that we do in sports media where you try to say whose fault is this or who gets the credit. Nobody's making picks by themselves. Bob's not in a room making picks by himself. Bob's not deciding by himself or whoever the GM's going to be on who's going to be on the team and who's not going to be on the team next year. And the players themselves have a say in this as well. All right, this is the Warriors Summit at Buonvino and Walnut Creek. Thank you, all of you, for being in this room with us. And thank you to those of you listening with us on this very, very special day. Now, Guru, weigh in. Hold on one second. Guru, weigh in on this, because this is the rat on the table.
Brought to you by ACO Pest Control. ACOPestControl.com for all your pest control.
Make sure there's a big difference between pests and pets.
I said pests.
Yeah.
I work with one.
Watch why this is the rat on the table. I don't even think we need to pose this as a question. All I have to do is say his name, and there will be for everybody in here somewhat of an emotional response and an opinion that will come. And Joe, you're going to start because I think you've done a lot of work to earn this subject this year.
I know where we're going.
Who's that?
I know where we're going.
Brock Purdy.
You wanted to bench this guy.
Carlos Correa.
No, I didn't want to bench Klay Thompson.
Listen, here it is. You've earned this for sure.
Yes.
Klay Thompson.
Oh, boy.
Go ahead.
Let's go.
Let him talk. Let him talk.
Let's go.
When you love someone so much, you understand their strengths and their weaknesses. My wife's probably listening right now. All right?
Hi, Mrs. Shaq.
And here's where I'm going with this. Pow! I didn't have a team meeting. I didn't tell Klay Thompson that he didn't come into shape. The team did. The team had a team meeting and sat him down about shot discernment, which ended up rearing its ugly head again in the playoffs. I love him. I think his role needs to evolve. No one's saying bench him, cast him away and never use him again. He's got value. But to think that he's the same player he was 4 or 5 years ago, part of what made him special, and Steiny's alluded to this many times, his ability to guard any best perimeter player on the court while Steph can go hide off, and I'm not diminishing Steph, but go guard someone in the corner, was vital to what made them so dynamic as a backcourt. To me, I view him like a stretch 4, and that's not a bad thing. I think you can pick and choose your spots. He sees himself as a numero uno or number 2 option, and to me, it's like, no, you got to get in where you fit in. You got to take better shots, and you need to find the right matchups defensively so that he can stay on the floor and not get cooked.
And going back to the fake trade that we were throwing out, this is part of the thought process. Is Andrew Wiggins is now your 2.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's strong enough to be a 2.
But on the defensive end.
Yes.
But the reason I love Jaylen Brown so much is I've heard so many people sitting at these tables in the last week say the role that is open for an audition right now with the Golden State Warriors is 2. 2.
Yeah.
Who's 2? Well, Jaylen Brown can be that.
I agree with that.
Jaylen Brown, and that's why I'm so enamored with him right now. But Guru, Klay Thompson, go ahead.
Now, I've done a 180 on this because I'm watching the NBA playoffs, and what Klay Thompson can't do and what he's a victim of is the catch and shoot. But what's eroding around him in that offense is the 2 others, and I'm just going Dre and Looney, that are no threats. And now when you watch Klay's dribbling the ball, trying to create, I'm not mad at Klay, but that's not his forte.
No.
His forte back in the day was, let me spot up, catch and shoot. Let me tell you who needs that. The Knicks, the Lakers. So I feel like there are teams that would covet Klay Thompson at his contract rate right now to where they had more going for their offense to where we can kick it out to shoot to Klay Thompson, and it would manifest as to now, I feel like he's the biggest victim of there's nothing really around you, so now you got to fiddle faddle to do something you never, that wasn't what you were.
Bonte, I heard Bobby Marks tell you guys last week that expiring contracts are not what they used to be in the NBA.
They're not.
And so I question what you just said in terms of A, the Warriors have already said, JD, they're not trading Klay Thompson. But B, I don't even know how tradable that contract is.
Why would you want to trade him in today's game? Goo hit on all the spots. Catch and shoot. The NBA's a wide open game. Everybody's hitting threes. Look at the Miami Heat. What are Miami Heat doing?
God.
Penetration kick, wide open threes, nail them. The Denver Nuggets, same thing. And to Guru's point, having 2 guys who are non-threats offensively takes away the spacing. So Klay's coming off all these screens. And teams are saying, Sacramento and the Lakers, we're going to make Klay dribble. We're going to make him play to his weaknesses. Dribble. Klay's looking for something, and he bricks. Let's not forget Klay Thompson had the best month of his career in the month of January. Let's not forget in February, he had the 3rd best month of his career in February. And his role had to change so much. Curry's in and out of the lineup. Now all of a sudden, I'm the 1 option, I'm the 2 option. Wait, Wiggins is out. All of a sudden, I'm the 2 option again. Wiggins is back. I'm the 3rd option. Wait, Jordan Poole is starting next to me. So it wasn't just DiVincenzo, Poole, and all these other guys affected by their roles. Klay Thompson, his role changed throughout the season. And you really want to get away from a shooter who's a knockdown shooter shooting over 40%?
Need shooting.
They need
Warriors
shooting.
Need
so you need better shooting around Klay Thompson. To Guru's point, having Draymond as a non-threat, Looney as a non-threat, GP2 as a non-threat affected Klay Thompson, and he struggled mightily.
This is the Warriors Summit on 95.7 The Game. All of the hosts together at one time talking out Warrior offseason. Dibs, you and I have had this conversation. I'm with Bonte, which is I'm not saying that Klay is perfect. I'm not saying he's what he was. I am saying that the way we saw him last, which was in a terrible series
3
against
for 19.
the Lakers.
Yeah.
We see a terrible week, and it is shading the way we feel about Klay Thompson too far. We've gone too far. Is it coming down a little bit? Maybe. But the feeling we have about Klay right now is too far in the negative direction based on a really bad week and a half.
I think it's more than that. And I go back to what Joe said about shot discernment, because that was a thing not only in October and November, but in April and May as well. And what happened against the Lakers, he missed open shots. It was less about shot discernment. He missed wide open shots. And the thing that struck me about Klay this year is he got away from his ability to score in any way other than the catch and shoot three. You remember the mid-range game he used to have? The back to the basket post-up game he used to have? It feels like he doesn't do what he used to do to be Klay Thompson anymore. Steiny's made great points about his defense. When he's not a good on-ball defender and you can't play him on the ball, he's not a good off-ball defender. So now you're weakening two spots defensively. Ponte's right. You are too about shooting. You don't get rid of Klay because you need what he can bring when Klay gets hot, but those days are fewer and further in between. I wonder if Klay can put in an actual summer of work. Last summer, he didn't do any work. He didn't scrimmage at all, and he came in flat and out of shape. So does Klay put in the work this year, knowing it's a contract year, and get back to doing Klay things? If he can, then absolutely you need Klay Thompson.
JD, before you weigh in, because I see you nodding a lot. Okay, crowd, here you go. Listen up. Listen up. How important is it to you that Klay Thompson finish his career in a Warriors uniform?
Smart people. Smart. You got to incredible.
Congratulations, your titles are officially over.
Yeah, okay. Steiny just poured vino all over your head.
Dude, snuff him
I did that on purpose. We got a few.
Messing around.
Hold on, we got a few thumbs down. Make some noise if you think you're getting about ready to move on from Klay.
You're trying to get these people run out of here, Mark. Mark.
You know, there is one thing.
No, JD,
Go ahead,
you were
JD.
doing a lot of nodding when Dips was talking.
There's a lot of different things.
I don't do that. I don't nod when Dips talks. Go ahead.
Klay Thompson has to get a grip.
Thank you.
This offseason. And Klay Thompson has to understand that for the time being, he's no longer a max player. Now, he can prove himself to be a max player by coming out next year and being an all-star and being efficient and putting in the work in the offseason. The thing that, and this was I think he exemplified one of the Warriors' biggest problems this season, which was the inability to acknowledge the fact that you weren't quite good enough. You weren't quite as good as you used to be. And rather than being stubborn about it, change your game a little bit. Take better shots. Understand on nights where you are a little bit cold that you got to keep the ball moving and get it back. And just quit being so freaking stubborn. That, to me, was the biggest problem Klay Thompson had this season. He has to get a grip on that and not let the bad games kill you. His bad games absolutely killed you. We can talk about great month. We can talk about 40% from three and 300 makes. Like, we can get into all of that, and there's some good things in there. But his bad games basically were automatic losses because they were so bad they completely wrecked the game. You got to limit the bad games.
Chesky, what do you want to say?
I want to follow up on that, JD. Like, no one's saying he can't be good, but in the playoffs, De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk outplayed them. Like, Steph Curry was really good. Klay didn't come along for the ride. Jordan Poole didn't come along for the ride.
Didn't outplay Steph.
And then let's go to the Lakers series. Like, Schroeder and D'Lo are outplaying you, and Austin Reeves. Like, that. I'm sorry, that can't happen at $43 million when you're the 9th highest paid player in the league. And I know they paid him prior, but like, you cannot get outplayed by 7 guys in the playoffs.
Okay, but it's not that easy.
Go ahead,
the Lakers had a great game plan, and they said, we're going to make this guy catch and shoot.
He had
We're going to shut
plenty of
down
wide-open shots,
plenty of wide open shots. He did. He bricked them. He was cold. He was cold by that point. It was done. It was rattled. But when you have 2 non-scorers on the floor, I don't think people understand what it does to the spacing and what it does to your motion offense. Klay can't function like that. If he's not the same player he was before the injury,
he's not a player.
You need to flip that. You need to figure out a way to not put him in that position to where he's dribble, and clanking shots.
I'll agree with you guys from this standpoint, and Steiny and Goo, love to hear what you guys think about this. Like, what you guys sound like you're talking about is awareness, not more than basketball. An awareness of yourself, where you are in your career. And one thing for me, huge fan of Klay Thompson his entire career, but there were a couple of moments this year. It didn't feel right when he played so poor and kept holding up 4 fingers at other teams.
His attitude stunk.
Right?
Let's be honest. His attitude stunk. His energy stunk.
Right. It's like, Klay, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, but you know what?
But it's not
Devin Booker.
Sure.
Front runner.
I'm not talking about Devin
the
Booker.
Grizzlies,
I'm
front
not
runners.
talking about
They need to
Devin
be
Booker.
checked.
It's not
they got
to
to be
be
reminded. Y'all done nothing. I got 40, so stop talking to me.
Right,
I don't care about that.
Wouldn't you rather see the 4 fingers go up when you're up by 15 as opposed to down by 25?
Man, it is.
I don't want to see 4 fingers when you're getting cooked. You're getting cooked. Go ahead.
But the four fingers wasn't just about the said game. It was about I've been in the dark place without ball for 2 effing years.
Yeah.
I've been watching. I'm watching this young pup Jordan Poole not take my spot. But the thoughts I had to go to bed with those thoughts. And then JD, because you're my dog. Who is there for him to really pass to? He had to shoot almost out of necessity. If it wasn't Steph, who's there? I mean, but to Looney to Dre, he had to shoot out of necessity. And I'm not defending. You made some points.
He's dribbled more in the playoffs than he has his whole career.
But that's because of the players around him not doing that.
That I agree with.
Not creating.
And if we're looking at Klay Thompson, and if you're going to, and we all do, everyone feels for what he went through. But how many years in a row can we talk about a dark place? They won a championship 11 months ago.
And he played the most minutes.
Right, with him as a key piece. You can't come back from that the next year and say, I'm in a dark place.
And
why are you in a dark place?
Every shot he makes, he looks around like he wants to start giving everybody the bird. Like, bleep you, bleep you, bleep you. You all said I couldn't make, I'm not as good as I used to be. He played angry in the worst way. He had a horrible energy this year. Everything was chip on my shoulder, bleep everybody with every shot I made, and that sucked the life out of this Warriors team as much as anything Draymond Green did.
No, I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
Michael Malone, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Draymond literally almost broke a dude's jaw. And they all said after the season,
and Klay looks like he wants to break a dude's jaw with every shot he makes.
Well, 40%.
No, this is interesting. Steiny, what do you think about that? Because you and I have had our Klay conversations. Defensive end, offensive end, what have you. This is a new arena that I think this is under-discussed. We're talking about attitude now about Klay.
I've come up with what's the most under-discussed thing.
What's that?
And I'm being serious.
Take your time.
We're talking about Klay Thompson. Are we going to extend Draymond Green? Are we going to do this with Klay Thompson? You know what? Again, the titles are over. They're over. We haven't talked about their biggest decision in the offseason, and that's who are we drafting at 19?
No one. No one is.
You might be like, oh, okay. Oh, you know what? What about John Collins?
I don't see this.
He can help you going into the future. Let me tell you who else was at 19. You want Josh Okogie? Kevin Huerter? How about Anthony Simons? He'd look good in a Warrior uniform 3 or 4 years from now, wouldn't he? I think we need to start talking about the draft. Because you can get somebody good at 19 that might be able to help Steph Curry 2 years from now.
Steiny, you know that 3 years ago, this whole fan base...
Yeah, I know. Nobody wants it, do they?
No, because this whole fan base...
Let's get a bad draft at 19.
No, but this whole fan base was told 3 years ago, you're myopic and you're done winning titles and you're all wrong for believing in something.
That's right.
And then they won another one.
Right. So
let me ask you this.
If last year was the most improbable title that most people have ever seen, the definition of improbable is it will not happen again. It won't.
And now an 8 seed is going to the NBA Finals, and
they lost the play-in game.
You're victory lapping this team as if they are the blueprint in the NBA. They were 12 minutes from not even making the playoffs. This is not the blueprint. This is an outlier. This is not what's to follow. I'll follow Steph, Klay, and Dre over an outlier 3 weeks that the Miami Heat are having.
Go ahead. Have another good 40-win season.
Not 44. And why would you worry about who they're drafting at 19 when they're an organization that doesn't play young players anyway?
Because
you'd be better off trading the pick.
It's transition time.
Pick and you trade.
It's transition
You trade the pick with Jordan Poole because you're not transitioning yet.
Yeah.
You're not transitioning when you have the big 3 for another 3 years.
No,
so there's no reason to draft anybody at 19 if you have a coach the coach doesn't want to play young players.
Well, so
did he play last year?
You would still treat it
at all.
If you could get another Kevon Looney in this draft, you would take him, knowing you'd have to wait 3 years to get the Kevon. Of course you want to
that.
They don't want to wait 3 years.
People are worried. Well, they're in here today about next year.
How old is Stephen Curry?
He's 35.
Man,
35.
You guys are living in the past.
No,
Seriously, what are we doing?
Right.
Like, what are we doing?
Steph Curry's
We're bringing
35.
everybody back.
No, I don't think
things will be better.
I don't think you do
Nobody
that
said
at all.
that.
Nobody said that.
No, we
Nobody
already
said
know
that.
Poole and Drake can't exist. But hearing JD and Butch and Bonte and Steiny and Dibbs, I mean this, and I got to be careful. My pops told me characters define, son, when things are not going good. Everybody's front running when it's going good, but you find out what people are really about when things aren't. And the Warrior culture, every parade, the Warrior culture. But you know what? I think that Warrior culture failed the whole team in regard to repairing Poole and Draymond Green. And now, just hearing my guy Dickinson go in on Klay, did the Warrior culture help Klay get back or deal with whatever he was dealing with if Jay is right and has some merit to what he's saying? From my vantage point right now, I'm ready to say no. And now Bob is sniffing the Warrior culture, and he may be going the other way.
Wow.
So what is the Warrior culture that we magnum cum laude, but now what was it really? What was it really? I'm asking.
Go ahead.
Practical question for everybody here, because I don't know this. If you're of the camp, we're going to bring Draymond back for 2 or 3 years, re-sign him, right? What are you going to do with Klay? Is Klay coming back on the last year of his deal, or do you extend Klay?
Is it October 19th? You need to have a decision on extensions? Something like that, isn't it? Like early October,
Right.
JD?
Yeah, I think it's a little later than that now. But
Right, so now you can't.
Yeah.
You guys agree we can't have Klay on the last year of his contract with Draymond and Steph having 3 more years.
Absolutely not.
That is not ideal,
And that's,
right?
No, and so
Okay.
Draymond gets re-signed to a 2-year deal with the second year would be a player option. So he picks up his player option for this year. He gets $2 and $50 with the second year. Hey, if you're not happy, you can opt out then. And Klay takes
Who are you
a
betting
massive
on to
pay
be
cut.
better?
And
Who are you betting on to be better over the course of the next 3 years?
I think
Draymond or Klay?
Klay.
You're betting on Klay?
I think Klay fits better on many other teams than what Draymond provides.
That's interesting.
I think Klay,
Plus,
maybe.
also, Steve Kerr has 1 year left on his deal. He's going to want an extension.
Yeah, okay, we got a Buonvino question because you just rolled over something that I think everybody would love to weigh in, and I'm saying you the guru. This is the Warriors Summit on 95.7 The Game with all the hosts here at Buonvino and Walnut Creek. And to everybody assembled here at Buonvino, this is a yes or no question. So here is the question. Can Jordan Poole and Draymond Green coexist on the same basketball team? Hold on.
That's amazing.
Who says yes? Who says no?
Dibbs.
Wow. 10, yeah.
So
She knows.
Bonte, what do you think?
I don't think so. They didn't coexist this year.
Yeah.
And then they all blame the season on what happened in training camp. So, no, hell no, they can't coexist.
And it sure didn't seem like Jordan Poole's any closer to getting over it.
Wow.
No, why would he?
blame him?
No, honestly, how do you blame Jordan?
Hold
No,
on,
I'm
one
just
at a
saying.
time.
That's great.
Go ahead, Bonte.
No, I was just going to say Draymond Green comes off the bench against Sacramento Game 4, and everybody makes the headlines about Draymond Green coming off the bench and yada, yada, yada. I volunteer. The fact is they were better in that series with Draymond Green coming off the bench. But he mentioned in the article, I knew I got my voice back in the month of January when I went up to Jordan Poole and told like your decision making. Leave JP out of it. Just do what you got to do. Leave JP. JP's having a hard time. Did you tell Stephen A? Well, February I got my voice back, but we struggled because of the punch. Hell no, they can't coexist. One of them needs a fresh start.
I don't blame. Just real quick.
Go ahead.
I don't blame Jordan Poole
That's
for
what I'm
that.
saying.
But my point is, if you get to the end of the year,
Exactly.
and you start saying, okay, can they coexist? And Jordan Poole still seems as upset about it as he's ever been. Fair. That's fair. That's fine. He can feel that way, but then you can't coexist.
I mean, here's
then it's a wrap.
Here's the I think the question about it, and maybe this is a little conspiracy theorist-esque, but I wonder, JD, what you think about this. Is it equal parts Draymond is just a mouth and he's going to say to Stephen A. whatever he wants because, or when the Warriors come out, because it was Steve Kerr the day before that as well that certainly lent credence to the idea that the punch ruined the season, is that almost a way where the Warriors are telling the league, oh, no, what you saw in the playoffs last week, don't look at those stats because it was the punch. So you're up in the trade value by saying, if you got Jordan Poole, Toronto Raptors, he would be the old Jordan Poole that we saw before because no one on your team has punched him.
I think that's interesting. I think they are trying to keep it.
They're pumping him up.
I think they are trying to keep the value of. I think there's two players they've tried to say really kind things about. They've tried to say really kind things about Jordan Poole. They've tried to say really kind things about Jonathan Kuminga because they know that those are the two chips that they have to try and get better. Even though they may not believe that Poole and Draymond can get along, and how can you? I'm with all you guys on that. I don't think you can. And then you're basically trying to with Kuminga, you're trying to make good on a player that may want a trade, which is kind of mind-boggling in its own way, but I don't want to get
Well, then you have to staple him to something. You have to staple him to sweeten the pot out of any deal. Like, because his contract isn't really that much. He's just like a throw-in that people want as a high-end guy.
He's a high-end prospect, though.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying, in terms of financial value to get something back, you have to staple that to something else to get something of significance.
And just remember, Joe Lacob may disagree because $6 million also quickly turns into about $30 million.
That's luxury tax.
Right.
I'm talking about to absorb a contract back of significance.
Yes.
The good players are all making 25 plus. So just trading all the young players and stapling them together doesn't get you any real significant mover. You have to trade one of the big guys.
And that's why I think you trade the pick as well, because it
has no money value until it's selected.
But what I'm saying is that you talk about stapling things to make it sweetening the pot to other teams. This organization has not shown a willingness to play young players. Yep. So why would you bother drafting someone at 19 who you have to pay $4.5 million to, which turns out to be $20 million because you're already over the tax? You might as well trade that pick with Poole and Kuminga and get more back.
But why real quick are we buying the idea that the organization won't play young players? Jordan Poole's a young player. He's been playing for 3 years.
Four years.
He had no choice the first 2 years.
Sometimes. Like,
let's not also forget they started Wiseman day one.
He was their second best player in the first couple games.
Let's go to the 49er comp. When all the Trey Lance conversation, that was always a young quarterback. Well, so's the guy who ended up coming in and playing just fine and winning the job out of the 7th round. So I think sometimes the organization gets that thought out there of, well, they're just a young player. They need reps.
But then why didn't they draft a more seasoned player in the kid out of Michigan? Then why didn't they trade back down to get someone like Okogie? There were a variety of players that had more seasoning. They went with high upside. The Jordan Poole thing, I think, is the most important thing. Draymond is a bully. We all know this. Right. Why are we afraid to say it?
No, go ahead.
And we love him when he's on our team. We love him when he's on our team. He didn't bully AD, and they got bullied, and now they're out at home.
Picked him up off the floor.
Draymond did the same thing to a lot of young players. James Wiseman got screamed at in a COVID year in an empty gym, and Draymond got a technical because the referee thought he was yelling at him. I love Draymond, but Draymond bullied this kid, and I don't think Jordan Poole's the greatest vehicle for empathy. I don't think he is, because he had a horrible year, like by his standards, because we believe there's more to it. But I think this is a microcosm of how young players have to assimilate. Kevon Looney is so much wiser beyond his years to be able to fit in. Like, very few players come into the league as mature and as just wise as Kevon Looney. So to expect someone like Kuminga or Jordan Poole to be able to play on the level with a bully like Draymond Green, who demands excellence from others but never looks in the window, that's on the organization for bringing in the wrong guys, knowing what their roster was.
Well, listen.
That's 2 timelines is what that was.
And drafting, it's always a crapshoot.
But
You're not wrong.
Moody tends to be a more seasoned guy, right?
No doubt.
Which would I agree.
Play college basketball.
But then why did you play Anthony Lamb all year?
Because Moody stunk when he played.
No, I agree.
Like if Moody had played in the regular season the way he played in the playoffs, Moody would have played all year.
But then why not play Anthony Lamb in the playoffs if you loved him so much? They needed a body.
Because Moody had gotten better. That's the thing.
Go ahead.
I think when you look at what they tried to do this year, they wanted to play Wiseman and they wanted him to be good, and he wasn't. So that got scrapped, and they wanted to play Kuminga, and they did. But then Jonathan Kuminga regressed, and you got to a point where you didn't feel like you could.
GP2 came back. Wiggins came back. I think
February 1st.
Jonathan Kuminga got into his own head, I thought, late in the playoffs, and he stopped
playing 20 minutes a game.
Yeah, and he went from 23 minutes a game to 9 minutes a game.
But what happened in Sacramento?
Yeah, he got pulled 3 minutes. Boom, boom, boom. Close some assignments.
Keegan Murray was unplayable after 3 games.
When you're a young
player. And then they kept playing him. And then by game 4, he looked great.
I think they underestimated the difference between a championship team and a project. Like, let's say theoretically they would have drafted Keegan Bradley, Halliburton, and Okongwu.
Keegan Murray. Keegan
What
Bradley,
I say, Keegler?
T12 in the PGA this week.
But even seasoned college players would have they would have figured it out, I think, and helped in a limited role. Wow. But Kuminga, Wiseman, and even Moody are on a different level below those three guys in terms of the understanding of the game.
Kuminga's closer in age to Riley Curry than Steph Curry.
Wow.
What?
Right.
No, this is a fact.
I don't even want to put words.
This is a fact.
That's maybe the greatest thing. I had a great one, too, I was saving, but
look at
I don't even know if I can touch that.
Well, they got 27 minutes to get the material out now.
I know how my two counterparts on my right and left feel about Kuminga, but if I threw his name, just the mention of his name, to me, makes some Warrior fans, their skin crawls. Because when I say his name, they almost feel like he hadn't earned anything. But I look at different junctures and sectors of this season, Jonathan Kuminga showed promise.
Yes.
He was a fan favorite, and my partner, you just like the dunks. It was bigger than the dunks.
Yeah.
He had a lot, and they empowered him. But hold on, let me just finish this. My partner told me Moses Moody, he's not a player. He ain't nowhere near ready. And I feel like Coach Kerr got lucky and backed into Moody staying ready from home, his family, whomever, because had you knew Moody could play in the offs, his ass should have been playing all year.
Agreed.
And had you done that with Kuminga, where would this team have been?
Well, that's
all I asked about Kerr.
Well,
How you going to sit Moody but didn't play him in the playoffs?
because it was bad.
Yeah, JD. No, listen to JD, because Guru, the one thing,
was bad.
But
Moody was bad in the regular season.
The energy is great, but it doesn't account for things that are happening during the regular season. You don't know if he would have played like that in the playoffs if he had been relied upon in the regular season and played poorly and lost his confidence. That's part of what coaching is. Why do you not bring players up from the minors all the time, the G League, whatever? If it's too soon, it's too soon. Moody's even talked about. JD, you're saying it. I hear you in the background. Moody got his shot and didn't play well.
Right.
He didn't play well.
And you got to play well in short bursts, which is what got Kuminga bit in the playoffs, was the fact that when Wiggins was out and they didn't have GP2, Kuminga was starting. They were starting DiVincenzo at the 3. Kuminga was playing the 4. He was playing his 20, 25 minutes. He knew he was going to get his time. He played pretty well. They carved out a role for him, defend, rebound, cut. Basically, your offense is made completely by everything else the Warriors do offensively. You're going to get a dunker spot cut. You're going to get a corner 3. You're going to get all those things. And in the playoffs, Wiggins is starting. Peyton plays the same position as Kuminga in the Warriors' eyes. He was really, really, really bad in 2 games against the Kings, like the worst player on the floor.
Yes,
bad.
yes.
And so
Say that
Steve Kerr
again.
went away. Kuminga was the worst player on the Warriors in the Sacramento series.
I agree with that, but DiVincenzo was also unplayable at times. He wouldn't even take a
you need
3-point
to
shot.
run
out of
But
bounds.
I know,
You
and
need
they
to
stuck
guys.
with them. And they stuck with them, and you saw he actually came around in the Lakers
Don't
series.
you guys
But here's the
think
thing.
that- go ahead, JD.
What bit Kuminga, though, is when they asked him to play 10 minutes, he couldn't play 6. He couldn't do 6 first half, 6 second half. He became so incapable of being productive in that role that it was easier to not play him at all.
I think there's a difference between playing poorly and not playing hard. Those are 2 very, very different things. And I think the reason that Jonathan Kuminga got pulled off the floor, I love the kid. I hope he stays with the Warriors. I hope he pops. I love a lot of the things that I saw at the end of the regular season. But when a ball bounces you right at you in the playoffs, I don't care
I don't
if you
think that's
are
fair.
Riley Curry knows to go after the rebound. When it comes to
Mark, everybody says that, but there were 6 other players.
Yes.
Thank you.
Like
Yes.
that, like
Draymond should have went up with a layup when he had a guy on the block.
Like, no, watch the beginning of the second quarter of Game 2.
Yeah,
should have gone.
It was Schroeder. Go ahead, JD.
No, I just watch the beginning of the second quarter against Sacramento in Game 2. Kuminga gave up 10 straight points.
Yeah.
And
it was a minus 10.
But he was done then, though. Mentally, he was fried in the playoffs.
In game 2,
Well, that's
he
not
was
his-
in the rotation.
that's not his fault.
Well, here's
No.
the thing we have to do. My last thought. I'm speaking a lot.
No, go ahead.
We need to stop. And you kind of said, Goo,
Yeah.
Warrior fans think this or that
Yeah.
on Kuminga. We got to stop acting like Jonathan Kuminga is a victim of anything, of Steve Kerr, of the Warriors, of their culture, of all this other stuff. Jonathan Kuminga needs to put in the work. He's got superstar potential.
Yeah.
He has to put in the work to do the little things, to rebound, to hustle, to be a dunker, to hit a corner three if the defense leaves him open in the context of the offense, and be a consistent high motor player. We need to stop with this Steve Kerr wrecked Jonathan Kuminga's season. He had a good season overall. He had bad playoffs.
Yeah,
Two
go ahead,
questions. Did
Monte.
Steve Kerr do a good job with the youngsters, and did Kuminga not get better from February 1st through the end of the season when you needed Kuminga to get to the damn playoffs in the first place?
He played
and avoid
well.
the play-in?
He played well.
right?
He
And
played
what
well.
happened?
That's why he was in the rotation in the playoffs.
But he got the quick hook right away.
Because
it was
he stunk.
You know, he
That's
stunk.
what happened.
And he
It's the
couldn't guard
playoffs.
LeBron James one time.
When you're
couldn't play no minutes. You needed to get more athletic and more physical.
I will say this. I'm talking about the Sacramento series.
Yeah,
I will
Sacramento.
say this.
Sacramento's a
I will
different
say this
series.
because I'll say this about the Lakers series. Because here's the thing about the Lakers series. To me, he didn't play in the Lakers series because he pouted about not playing in the Sacramento series. So the Sacramento series was his own thing. He deserved to not.
I told you that.
So
I think that sealed his fate.
I'm with you on the Lakers thing.
I thought he should have gotten a little more leeway. He played 25 minutes a game. I get it.
I'm with you on the Lakers.
Listen, I'm not even a monster Kuminga guy, but think about this for a minute. So he played like 2 months.
Yeah.
Things kind of counted.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, like, again, Wiggins gets to take 10 weeks off.
Wow.
And they get to reacquire Gary Payton II.
Was that a good trade?
And when they bring those two gentlemen back, what Kuminga has done is rendered almost irrelevant because he's now behind those two guys.
Right.
Like,
That's a good point.
I don't love, like, it's nuanced.
It's nuanced. Yeah.
But if I'm 20 years old and I'm Kuminga, I'm like, jeez.
He helped you get into the playoffs. You don't get to the top 6 without him.
Right, but that's sports in the playoffs. You don't wait. There's no waiting around for people to show up for sports in the playoffs. It's like a pitcher in a playoff
But
game.
The Warriors waited for Wiggins.
And JaMychal Green pouted, and he got to play.
That's different. That's a veteran. That's a veteran who's proved something. That's a championship player. Just 11 months ago.
All right, well, then you got to be, okay.
Yeah.
You got to be prepared to lose Kuminga then.
Juan Vino, Walnut Creek, Warrior Summit.
You guys are great.
And there's time for one more question coming up and an answer from all 7 of us and you, the crowd, as well. And that is, how should Jordan Poole handle this offseason? What should he say? What should he do? All of that is coming up next. Warrior Summit on 95.7 The Game.